Hello everyone, welcome to your first technical lesson, an introduction to Maya 2019. We're going to just basically explore the interface itself, some of the workspace options. We're going to go over how to kind of navigate your viewport. We're going to talk about saving and saving archives. We're going to do a quick review of primitive objects, how to move and rotate and scale them, how to edit them, point versus vertex versus edge and line, face and plane, basically object versus component mode. We're going to look at the channel box, the attribute editor, and the modeler toolkit panels. We're going to learn about the outliner panel, and we're going to finish up with a quick review of the viewport menus. So this is just a general introduction to get you used to Maya and get you up and running. So to start off, I have opened up Maya 2019. All of you should see something like this when you open it up the first time. You might see something like this, or just something kind of reset like this. Your outliner here on the left may or may not be open, so that might be closed. First thing I always like to show everyone is up here in the top right corner where my mouse is right now, you'll see that we have multiple workspaces. So there's Maya Classic, there's Maya Standard, Maya Expert, whoa, no menus, Maya for sculpting, pose sculpting, UV editing. There's basically a different menu set for every different task you might be doing. For right now though, I'm going to go back to Maya Classic. Actually, I'm going to go to Maya Standard, which gets rid of the timeline in the bottom. We don't really need the timeline right now, so that's kind of a good place to start. All right. So right off the bat, the first thing we're going to review is just how to save. It's something you need to do a lot. Everyone starting off in any advanced piece of software will go through a lot of work, and never save and crash. And Maya's holding a lot in its memory, so it's really important that you save a lot. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to File. I'm going to go to Save Scene, and I'm going to choose somewhere on my computer. I highly recommend getting yourself an external hard drive, and you can save it to your external hard drive. I have multiple drives on this particular computer right now. One of them is called My Book. And so that would be an external hard drive. This just takes away having to share your resources on your main system drive where the application is running from. So I'll go ahead here and I could kind of just create a new folder here and save all of my stuff into it. I'm going to go ahead and give it a name. I'll call this test/demo Maya 2019. And I'm going to go ahead and save. This is the student version of Maya, the educator's version, so that's where I'm getting this. Just go ahead and hit continue. So now we know I am saved. You can see it down here in the bottom right of my screen, results, volume, my book, test demo, Maya 2019. I can't stress enough how important it is from here on out to just regularly save. Maya does not autosave. So you need to either go to File and Save Scene, or you'll notice there's a shortcut here, Command S. And I can do Command S on a Mac or Control S on a keyboard. And it's really just muscle memory. You can see every time I save, no changes to save, so I got a little warning. But just get used to getting that muscle memory between your thumb and your forefinger. Command S, Control S, Command S, Control S, depending if you're on a Mac or a PC. Really do get that down and just do it constantly after you do even 5 minutes worth of work. Save, 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 okay? The other thing I like to point out is that anytime you can also archive your scene. And so this is a really important feature here, archive scene. This will save basically an archive of your entire Maya system, because Maya isn't just the saved file that I created there, that MB file. It has a whole bunch of resources that end up being saved in your user folder. And so this will archive all of them. So if I hit archive scene, you'll see result right wherever I had saved my original Maya file. You'll see that there's also going to be an archive. So if I go to my book here and I go here, I can see there's my original Maya file, and then also here is the zip file that has everything in it. If I open that up, you'll see I have the users folder where basically follows the structure that my computer would have had. If I go all the way in there, there's a mel file, a .mel file. And then if I go back out to volumes, my book, there it is, test demo. So it basically makes a copy of where everything is saved on your computer. And this gets important when you get into textures and external resource files, everything else. You want them all in that same folder together, okay? And this is how I'm having you turn in all of your assignments, is by creating an archive file, that zip file. You won't turn in the .mb, you'll turn in the zip. And if you're having any problems with troubleshooting or anything like that, and you want to share them with someone for help, send them that whole archive file and they'll have everything they need to open up your project. All right. So back to Maya here. Next thing I want to show you is just navigating the viewport. So right now we have a view of what's called a perspective view on our environment. Just to make it easier to see what we're looking at, if everybody comes up here to the poly modeling tab up at the top where I've got my mouse right now, you'll see there's a sphere, a cube, kind of a cylinder, and a cone. Let's just click on cube, a polygon cube, and put it into the scene. This will allow us to kind of at least have a frame of reference to look at. So now, again, I highly recommend you have a 3-button mouse for Maya. Trying to do this as a trackpad is not very fun in Maya, so it's really important you work with a 3-button mouse. So the first thing I'm going to teach you is how to zoom. You're going to use your scroll wheel, and you're going to zoom in on your object. I can zoom in or zoom out. It's pretty natural. We're used to kind of zooming in and out on a lot of other types of software out there, right? If I want to rotate now, I'm going to hold down the Command or Control key on my keyboard, and I'm going to use the left mouse button and just drag. So as I'm holding down Command or Control and I click and drag, I can rotate sort of my camera perspective on this 3D object. Very cool, right? And then if I want to do what's called panning, I hold down the Command or Control again and I click the middle mouse button and hold it down. And now I can drag up and down, left and right. You see, it's very different than the rotate. The rotate, I'm literally rotating all the way around the object. But panning, I'm just zooming up. I'm going up, down, left, right. You might wonder when that's going to be helpful. It's really helpful when you're zoomed in on an object and you're doing some editing. And maybe you don't want to just rotate, but there's like say I want to see the bottom of this cube. I don't want to have to rotate down here to see it. I want to hold the perspective, and then I just want to pan down, and then maybe pan back up and pan over here and pan to the left. So between panning, which is the middle button, and Control or Command, depending if you're in a Mac or PC, that's panning. And you notice the icon is that like left, right, up, down arrow on my screen. And then to rotate, again, Command or Control, and then left button mouse button. And you see I get that little rotate icon in the middle of my screen that's going with it. And then zooming, which is just zooming in and zooming out, okay? Those different tools together are going to just allow you to really navigate your viewport effectively, okay? Now, we do have some other tools we'll talk about in a little bit, but for the most part, that's what we're going to do here to kind of move and be able to navigate our viewport effectively, okay? All right, so we just talked about primitive objects. We created this cube to be able to look at this. I can delete this just by hitting the delete key, but these are really primitive polygon objects up here. So again, I clicked on that. You might have been on curves and surfaces to start. We click on the poly modeling tab. Now we have spheres, cubes, polygons, and cylinders. There's also toruses, polygon flat planes, polygon discs, which is also flat, has no dimensional quality other than an X and a Z. And then we have kind of a more advanced platonic solid. So you could try creating a few of these. There's a cylinder, you can delete it. There's the cube to delete. Cylinder, I can zoom in and out again and rotate around these, or pan up and down and delete. There's that torus ring, delete. Here's the flat plane. Here is the disk. And here's that platonic solid. There's a lot more to Maya, but this is just to help you start off with having some basic objects to work with, right? So that allows you to kind of, again, zoom around, add some objects to your scene, and play around with some of these primitives. Now, one of the things we're going to do right off the bat is, I just showed you how to use your virtual camera in 3D, how to zoom around, how to pan, and how to rotate. But we want to actually be able to move objects as well without moving the camera. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that object. I'm just going to bring a simple cube back in again, right? And one of the other things that's going to really help you as you move these is to go ahead and start looking between what's called a single view like we have right now. And if you look over here on the left, you have a four-way view and you have a two-way view. And this is really important. And the shortcut for these is spacebar. So if I hit spacebar, I move back to that single view, or if I hit spacebar again, I get all four views. And when it's going to toggle based on which viewport you've clicked in. Sometimes it's a little hard to see, but each of these viewports, when I click in them, gets a little light gray outline around them. So if I click in the perspective view and I hit spacebar, it'll just show me that one. But if I click in, say, the top view and hit spacebar, then it's going to zoom to that one instead. So keep in mind you can kind of click through these various viewports. But I'm going to have the four-way view up here so that I can kind of keep track of what's going on with my object as I move it in space. So we're going to talk about how do I rotate an object, how do I scale an object, and how do I move an object. So the first easy one to work with is just how to move the object. So I'm just going to kind of pan my viewport around here a little bit, get a nice perspective view on it. You'll notice that there's these arrows by default on here. Default, they're going to be in the move mode, and that's, you can activate your move mode, your move tool up here in the top left. So we've got our main selection tool, that's Q is the shortcut key for that. But then we can also choose move tool, which is W on the keyboard, rotate tool, which is E, and scale, which is R. So Q, W, E, R. You're probably getting used to the QWERTY style shortcuts here. So Q, W, E, R. Q just selects objects in the scene. So if I did have, say, a sphere in here, and I move this over to the side, I can just use Q and select my different objects, right? But the minute I hit W, you notice I get this little axis. And that's an internal axis. There's a lot of different terms for it. I've always known as an internal axis. There's lots of different, like I said, terms that people use for these. But sometimes it's an orientation point. I think there's like a jelly something term for it for different types of software. But it allows you to basically select, if I click on the little square in the middle, it's just going to move the cube around kind of willy-nilly in all dimensions. If you look at my other windows, you'll see I'm moving it left, right, up, down, kind of all over the place, right? I'm going to go ahead and undo. But if I say I choose just the red dimension, then I'm going to move just on the X plane. So I'm just moving in the X direction as far as X, Y, and Z goes, right? And you see there's a little icon here in the bottom left corner in all these windows to help you understand which color represents which dimension, X, Y, or Z in 3D, right? So if I choose the green arrow, now I'm moving in the Y dimension, up and down. It locks that mode of only being able to move up or down. And if I choose the blue arrow, I'm moving in depth, the Z depth. Right? So it's a really great way to be able to move in X, Y, or Z, right? It's a really nice way to interface with that. So if we now choose the rotate tool, or I hit letter E on my keyboard, it moves from an arrow to sort of these rotation rings, right? So it works the same way. I can choose to rotate my object, and that's on the yellow, that was on the Z plane, I believe. No, I'm sorry, that was on the Y plane. And then if I want to rotate on the X plane, I take the red one there. And if I want to rotate on the green, I get the Y plane. So it's up to you which one you want to choose. As I click on them, you see they get highlighted yellow. So blue, I'm back to Z, I'm rotating on the Z. Anything that's green, I'm rotating on the Y. And anything that's red, I'm on the X plane that I'm rotating. So again, a really nice tool there, a nice option for being able to rotate. Last, I'm going to show you is the transform tool, or I'm sorry, the scale tool. And this is going to allow you to scale the object. So again, I can click on it, or I can hit the letter R on my keyboard. And now you'll see each of these has sort of a little box instead of an arrow or the rotation scale. Again, if I click in the middle, I scale the whole thing evenly. If I click on just the blue, which is the Z plane, I'm scaling it in the Z direction. My cube is now turning into a kind of a rectangular form. Again, if I go with the green, I get the vertical or the Y plane. And if I choose the red, I get the X plane. So now I can really start to transform these objects. I could do the same thing on the sphere here. I could scale the whole thing down, and then I could make it kind of like an oblong little oval form there. And very quickly you can start to make some fun forms, right? You can start to play around with them, and you can play with W, E, R, and just move between them, right? And if I ever just need to select a different tool, I hit Q, and then I get back and I can select my objects, right? Keep in mind with W, E, and R, I can kind of select with them as well, but it'll just maintain that tool mode. So in this particular case, it's going to be the scale mode. So that's just a little, shortcut there on how to work with your move, your rotate, and your scale tools.